What's going on? Move the Mouse here. And if you're in the market for a new skateboarding game in 2020, I wanted to answer the question, should it be Skater XL or Session? And maybe some of you are thinking, but hey, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 just got remastered. We'll talk about that later. For now, if we want to talk about kind of a more realistic skateboarding game, your two options for a new game on the market are Session and Skater XL. Now, Session is the first one that I got my hands on. I got my hands on this at PAX East 2020, and it has a really tough control scheme. I was actually a little scared walking up to play the game myself, watching everybody that was trying it just fall flat on their face every few seconds. The default control scheme actually has you controlling the trucks, or which way you're going, left or right. For those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, basically you lean on the board by using the left trigger, right trigger, and then you're controlling your feet each independently with the sticks. And that control scheme, for the most part, is available in a very similar format on Skater XL. But I think Skater XL has made it a little bit smoother, a little bit easier, maybe to the point of being unrealistic, but we'll get there in a moment. Now, for those of you that might be wondering, Mouse, why are you talking about a skateboarding game? Well, if you go way back on my channel, back to 2010, the very first video I uploaded was a skate highlight reel from Skate 3. That was way back in 2010. I love skateboarding games. I've been playing them pretty much as long as they've been around. I first played 720 or 720 Degrees. It was an Atari game that came out in December 1986. And it was fun, but a little bit more capable was Skate or Die. That came out the following year, 1987, for the Nintendo Entertainment System. After that, though, we'd have to wait more than 10 years for a really good game to hit the market for skateboarding fans, and that was in September 1999 when Tony Hawk's Pro Skater was released. Now, primarily, most people probably played that on the PlayStation, but it was also available on the Nintendo 64, Game Boy Color, Dreamcast, and Engage. Some of you may never even heard of that last one. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater filled the gap for a while, but it was anything but realistic controls. You hit A to jump or to ollie, and it wasn't really organic in any way. For the next 8 years after the release of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, that's pretty much all we had was various releases in that series. But in 2007, EA Black Box released Skate, and it completely changed skateboarding games forever. Skate introduced this concept of what they called a flick-it control system, where you're actually flicking the right stick to control the movement of your board. So, pushing down, or rather holding down, then pushing up, would basically make you, pop an ollie. And if you combine that motion with, a push to the right instead of directly up, or rolling it to the right, you could get kick flips, heel flips, shove-its, all sorts of different combinations. And it felt so good and so organic. It really hit this sweet spot where, you kind of felt like you were skateboarding and not just hitting buttons and telling a character on screen to do something. It meant that there was a lot more falling, and that's a trend that continues in these latest games that we'll see plenty of today. Once the skate games were on the market, I was just done with Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. It was fun, but it wasn't really what I needed. It wasn't what I wanted when it came to a skateboarding title. In 2010, Skate 3 came out, and that was fantastic. And again, that was my very first video on the channel with some Skate 3 footage that I had edited together. I'll leave a link in the description. Go check that out after if you want to see what I was up to 10 years ago. But since then, we've had this tremendous gap. And sure, we've had some Tony Hawk excursions, Tony Hawk Pro Skater 5 being one of the worst. And there was that one with the board. Was that 5? They released a board that you could stand on, and motion controls and all that stuff, kind of cool. But the actual implementation, not so great. So now we find ourselves in 2019, 2020. And if you're looking for a good skateboarding game, there's two options on the market right now: Session and Skater XL. So let's talk about Session first. Officially released in early access for Steam on September 17th, 2019, and as of June 2020, available on the Xbox Game Preview program. That's the same thing, early access for Xbox. Session's developed by a studio out of Montreal called Creature Studios. The game's considered by many to be a spiritual successor to the Skate series. It was originally conceived in 2015. In early November 2017, they released a free demo, and they've been working on it ever since. You can get your hands again on the early access version today, but it really is an early access version. The environments don't feel entirely fleshed out. There's some cool spots and a couple cool lines in each one of the little areas that you can load into, but the edges of the map don't have any good connecting fibers. There's no good way to really flow lines together, and ultimately they feel pretty small. The environments don't feel that large, and it left me wanting a lot more. The default control scheme is really tough, and when I walked up to the booth at PAX to get my hands on the game, I was a little nervous because everybody in front of me was just falling flat in their face every 3 seconds. I was able to actually pull off a couple tricks and not fall on my face nearly as much as everybody else that was trying it out. And that comes from a background in gaming and a background in skateboarding. It does translate pretty well if you understand kind of how your feet move on a board when it comes to performing certain tricks, because both of the sticks independently control left foot and right foot. And that's something that's very different from what we learned in the Skate series. In Skate, all of your feet movement for controlling the board was done by the right stick, and all of your movement was done with the left stick. And Session and Skater XL both combine both sticks to control some of that movement of your feet. And it's certainly something that you have to get used to. Now, in the case of Session, they do have what's called a legacy control mode. So if you want to jump into what is the closest approximation of actual skate controls, like from the EA title, that's probably your best way forward. But they do mention in the game that that's still in early development. They haven't fully fleshed that out yet. But if you know Skate, you can certainly start getting around in Session with those controls. But it's a very different physics engine at work. You are going to fall down a lot. And it's one of those things that when you pull off these really crazy lines, it's awesome. It's amazing. It feels so good. And then you'll go right back to falling on your face for half an hour. So it's a tough game to get the control scheme down for. But when you hit things just right, it's super rewarding. It's like actual skateboarding. It takes a lot to get that perfect run that ends up on the video. And this is no exception. Now, having said that, though, it's not just, me being new to the game. Some of it is the incredible difficulty that's built into it. And it's super finicky about how your board snaps to a grind when you land on a rail, and in turn, how it pops off if you're trying to do even the most basic trick coming off of a rail grind. It's frustrating. It is not easy, and really, I think, at the end of the day, it's more difficult than it needs to be for a game. Even with some of the adjusted difficulties, which affect how things snap to the rail, it's inconsistent at best. And I don't think it's kind of where it needs to be. Having said that, though, again, it is an early access and game preview game, so don't expect it to be fully fleshed out if you pull the trigger and pick that one up from the store. Let's switch over and talk about Skater XL for a minute. And this one feels a little smoother, but I think it's because they've put more forgiveness into making it so you don't crash as often. You can run over little curbs that would instantly give you a faceplant in Session in Skater XL, and you'll be okay. But you'll run over that same curb 2 minutes later, and it will crash you. So it's inconsistent. You are a little floppy, but rails seem to be the trickiest part for devs in 2020 when it comes to skateboarding games. That's the thing that's going to get thrown off the most. You're going to crash the most going into a rail, and it's not necessarily because your board didn't land right. Your board looks like it landed right, but then your character will fly 70 yards off into the sky. So sometimes it just doesn't make any sense. I think the control schemes, though both a little different, are a little bit better on Skater XL. But again, that's because it's more forgiving and probably more what I'm used to from Skate from EA. Soundtrack-wise, Skater XL definitely has the edge as well. They've got some good licensed music in there, and it brings me back to those days of playing Tony Hawk Pro Skater and early days of Skate. There's definitely some good music in there, but even on Xbox, you can call up Spotify and listen to anything that you want. So I'm not so sure that, including better music is something that is necessarily a decision maker. But if you want that all-in experience and everything in the game, then that's something that does bear some weight. And Skater XL definitely has the edge there when it comes to soundtrack. Session went a different route, and they have, I want to say, 2 or 3 artists that have like an entire album of material on there. So I mean, it's definitely still good. It's just very different approach. And if you want, actual licensed music from varied artists, Skater XL again is the way to go. But again, 2020, get Spotify on your Xbox, or play music in the background on your computer. The in-game music shouldn't be that deciding factor. I think from a control scheme perspective, they both have real challenges. They both, in a way, make you really feel like you're controlling that board. I think Skater XL is just a little bit more forgiving when it comes to hitting some of the rails, and it ends up being a little less frustrating in the process. If you want that hardcore experience and control scheme, I think Session is the way to go. If you want that middle ground that's a little bit more EA Skate, but not quite so simplified as Tony Hawk Pro Skater, obviously, then Skater XL might be the way to go. I don't think either of them are bad games. I don't think either of them are entirely fleshed out, though, and they still need work. The unfortunate thing with Skater XL is it is an official release. It's not in-game preview program. So I don't know how much we'll see for updates. I don't know how much the game is going to change down the road. Now, in terms of platform support, Session is available on Microsoft Windows via Steam Early Access or on Xbox via the Game Preview program. Skater XL is available on PS4, Xbox One, and Steam, and also coming soon to Nintendo Switch. So depending on what platform you're on, that might automatically make that decision a lot easier. If you're on PS4 or Nintendo Switch, Skater XL is pretty much the only way you can go. But if you've got Xbox or Steam, you can go either Skater XL or Session. Now, I wanted to make sure it wasn't me completely out of the loop, so I loaded back up Skate 3, started doing some tricks, and, had that muscle memory back right away. And, that right there might be part of the problem. If I'm applying my muscle memory from Skate into these games that are not Skate, even though they're trying to borrow some of the control schemes, that could be part of my issue. At the end of the day, Session is really, really unforgiving when it comes to landing those tricks. You got to hit them perfect. You got to think about the angle that you're attacking. And if you're on one of the higher difficulties, the default or hardcore especially, or even legacy, which tries to mimic the controls of Skate 3, is still very finicky about hitting that rail just right. Again, Skater XL seems to be a little bit more forgiving when it comes to hitting some of those tricks. But ultimately, either way, whatever game you decide on, you'll be falling on your face a lot. So get used to that and be prepared for some frustration, but also prepared for elation when you finally hit those tricks. It really is a good feeling when you combine a good line. I just couldn't pull off too many of those when I was recording these clips. Ultimately, in 2020, if you're looking for a good skateboarding game, again, it's between these two. It's between Session and Skater XL. If you want to revisit the glory days of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2, that's certainly an option. But the controls on those games are just kind of ridiculous. It's very arcadey. You're pressing a button to jump. There's no real feeling of skateboarding. You're a skateboard superhero that's combining these, 5-minute long combos, where when it comes to Session Skate, Skater XL, it is thrilling if you can string together 3 tricks. So don't go into it thinking it's at all like a Tony Hawk Pro Skater. And in fact, I have a feeling most of the people that would be even looking at this video in the first place probably know that it's not. But just to be clear, if you're looking for something easy and fun, kick back on the couch and, imagine you're a skateboard superhero, go get Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2. If you want to recapture some of that feeling of actually pulling off tricks, then Skater XL and Session are the way to go. And if you're coming from a background from EA's Skate, I think you'll be able to translate that proficiency or skill set into either of those games, but just know what you're getting going in. Session's still, again, very much in early access, but I think it's a very capable game with a very difficult default control scheme, but you can throw it in a legacy mode if you want to feel a little bit more like Skate controls and hit the ground running. Skater XL is a little easier to adapt to and a little bit more forgiving in terms of letting you hit rails and bump into things and not knocking you off your board as easily. When it comes to soundtrack, Skater XL has the win, but again, in 2020, I can't tell you how many times I've booted up Spotify in the background playing games, possible on Xbox, PlayStation, and of course PC. So the in-game soundtrack isn't something that wins me over. But for those of you that aren't using those integrations, that's definitely something to consider. I think at the end of the day, they're not that different. And seeing the success of these games coming to market, and then Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2 getting remastered, and now Skate 4 coming back, everybody wants to get back in on this bandwagon that was alive and well when Skate 3 came out. And I'm not sure why EA put that one to rest. But I think they've realized their mistake, and now we can expect a Skate 4 title coming, I don't know, in the next year or so. I don't think they've announced any release dates for that. But if you're looking to fill the void for now, Skater XL and Session are the way to go. I think there's pros and cons to both. I hope that gave you some information on what I like, what I don't like about them. But ultimately, the choice is up to you. Let me know what you think down in the comments down below. What was your first skateboarding game? You know, were you playing back as far as I was, Skate or Die and 720? Did you get started on the Tony Hawk Pro Series? Was it Skate? You know, what got you into skateboarding games? And what are you looking for out of the next generation of games? You know, is it out there already with the Tony Hawk remaster? Are you waiting for Skate 4? Or are you going to give one of these games a chance? If you got questions that I did not cover, things you want to know about, let me know in the comments down below. And while you're here, check out the link in the video description of my very first video on this channel, which was a Skate 3 video way back in March, May, sometime early 2010. But it's been a while, and I definitely wanted to get back into some skateboarding experience on current generation. And these are both fun experiences, but they're just different enough. I think you'd really want to lean one way or the other. If you really want to lean into hardcore skating difficulty, falling flat in your face all the time, but feeling that amazing reward when you finally pull something off in a completely unforgiving environment, Session's the way to go. But that may sound a little too hardcore for people. And if you don't want the overwhelmingly simplistic approach of a Tony Hawk, but want something a little bit more skate feeling and newer, then Skater XL is probably the way to go. You know, my concern with the Skater XL game is that, you know, it's released. It's a 1.0 release. It's out there. So I don't know how committed they will be to applying updates and continuing to improve the experience. I know that Session's been working on it for a while, and early access is kind of a dirty word in some gaming communities, but I went out of my way to support them. I had a great talk with the developer at PAX. Super excited about what they're doing. And I hope they continue to make progress, because I think at its core, for what I want, I think Session's the better game. But it needs to be adjusted just a little bit, where it's not quite so unforgiving, because it's also a little finicky. And when those two things meet, you are going to crash a lot. A lot. So I don't know. Hopefully I gave you some ideas. Hopefully I didn't confuse the matter even more. Again, there's pros and cons to both. I don't think either one is a bad decision to buy if you're looking for kind of a tough, realistic, gritty skateboarding game. But I think there's just a little bit more polish on Skater XL, as you might imagine, because it's officially released and not in early access. But, you know, again, that could be a bad thing if they don't continue to develop heavily for it, because I think both titles need some work. And we should expect to see more of that from Session, because, you know, they're still in early access. They are still working on the game. They're still getting feedback. But again, let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Check out that skate video from 10 years ago when I wasn't so rusty. But again, I still had the muscle memory. I loaded up Skate 3 and it was working all right. If you enjoyed the video, likes, comments, shares, they all help the channel a lot, and they're all greatly appreciated. Links to lots of things in the description down below, including that Skate 3 video, my Discord, all kinds of other stuff if you'd like to support the channel. But until the next one, I'm going to go bandage up some of these scrapes and get on the board again and try and pull off some tricks. But there's going to be a lot of falling flat in my face. So until the next one, this is Smooth Mouse signing off.